The thunderous applause echoes through the packed auditorium as three young adults step onto the stage to accept their prestigious awards. But what happened next shocked everyone because 15 years earlier, these same children were abandoned by their father the moment he saw their faces. This is the story of how one woman's unbreakable spirit turned society's cruelest judgment into an extraordinary triumph. But let's go back to where it all began. In a sterile hospital room where Rachel Thompson lay exhausted after giving birth to triplets. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as she waited for the nurse to bring her babies. When the door finally opened, her heart swelled with anticipation, until she saw the expression on the nurse's face. "Mrs. Thompson, your babies are healthy and beautiful," the nurse said carefully, wheeling the bassinet closer. "But there's something you should know." Rachel's breath caught as she looked down at three perfect newborns, Michael, James, and Sarah, all with distinctly African features. The room fell silent except for the soft beeping of medical equipment. "I don't understand," Rachel whispered, her voice barely audible. "My husband Mike and I are both white. How is this possible?" The nurse explained about dormant genes and ancestry, but Rachel's mind was spinning. These were her children. She could feel it in every fiber of her being. But how would she explain this to Mike? To her family? To the world? When Mike walked through that hospital door 20 minutes later, his face told the whole story. His eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in suspicion. "Rachel, what the hell is going on here?" "Mike, please, let me explain. Explain what?" His voice rose, causing other patients in nearby rooms to stir. "Explain how my wife gives birth to 3 black babies? Explain how you've been lying to me." "I haven't been lying." Rachel's voice cracked as tears streamed down her face. "The doctor said it's genetics. Sometimes traits skip generations and dash." But Mike was already backing toward the door. "This is insane, Rachel. I can't. I won't be part of this circus. People are going to think. They're going to assume. They're going to assume what, Mike? That these are your children. Because they are." Little did Rachel know that this single moment would define not just her future, but reshape an entire community's understanding of love, family, and second chances. Mike shook his head violently. "I'm sorry, Rachel. I can't do this. I can't raise someone else's kids while everyone whispers behind my back." His voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm leaving." The door slammed shut with a finality that echoed through Rachel's heart. She was alone with 3 newborns, no job, and a world that was about to judge her mercilessly. The first few weeks were a blur of sleepless nights and whispered conversations that stopped when Rachel entered rooms. At the grocery store, people stared openly. At the park, mothers pulled their children away. The mail brought anonymous letters, some supportive, others cruel beyond imagination. "Maybe it's for the best," her own mother said during one particularly difficult phone call. "Maybe you should consider other options. There are families who dash." Rachel hung up the phone and looked at her 3 babies sleeping peacefully in their cribs. Michael had his tiny fist curled around her finger. James was smiling in his sleep, and Sarah's breathing was soft and rhythmic. This decision would change everything, not just for her, but for everyone who thought they knew what family really meant. Months passed, and Rachel scraped by with part-time work and government assistance. The community remained divided. Some neighbors like Mrs. Henderson from next door brought casseroles and offered babysitting, while others crossed the street to avoid her. But the real shock was still coming. One crisp October morning, when the triplets were 8 months old, Rachel found an unmarked envelope slipped under her front door. Inside was a cashier's check for $5,000 and a simple note. "For Michael, James, and Sarah's future. A friend who believes in second chances." Rachel's hands trembled as she read the note again. Who would do this? And why? As she looked out her window at the quiet street, she noticed Mrs. Louise Parker from 3 houses down quickly turning away from her window, almost as if she'd been watching. The mystery deepened when, later that same day, Rachel received a phone call from the local daycare center. "Mrs. Thompson, We wanted to let you know that someone has anonymously paid for a full year of childcare for your children. They said to tell you that every child deserves the best start possible. Rachel sank into her worn armchair, the phone still pressed to her ear, her mind racing with questions. Who was helping her family, and what did they want in return? As she watched her 3 babies playing with their toys on the living room floor, completely unaware of the world's judgment or kindness, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching over them. But that mysterious letter was just the beginning of a chain of events that would transform not just Rachel's life, but challenge everything her community thought they knew about family, sacrifice, and the true meaning of love. Rachel's hands trembled as she unfolded the crisp white envelope that had appeared in her mailbox that morning. 3 babies slept peacefully in their bassinets nearby, oblivious to their mother's mounting anxiety. The letter contained no return address, no signature, just a simple message that would change everything. Dear Rachel, it read, I know these times are difficult for you and your beautiful children. Please accept this small token of support. More will follow monthly. You are not alone in this journey. Attached was a cashier's check for $5,000. Rachel stared at the amount, her mind racing. Who would do this? And why? She clutched the letter to her chest, tears streaming down her face. For the first time since Mike walked out, she felt a flicker of hope. The months that followed brought a steady rhythm of anonymous support. Every month, like clockwork, another envelope arrived with enough money to cover rent, groceries, and the basics the triplets needed. Rachel tried everything to trace the source, but the checks were untraceable, processed through different banks across the state. As Michael, James, and Sarah grew into curious toddlers, they began attending the local daycare. Rachel watched nervously from the parking lot on their first day, knowing the stares and whispers would follow them everywhere. Her fears weren't unfounded. Those are the Thompson kids, she heard one mother whisper to another. You know, the ones whose father disappeared when they were born. But alongside the judgment came unexpected kindness. Mrs. Chun from the daycare pulled Rachel aside one afternoon. Your children are remarkable, she said warmly. Michael already knows his letters. James has such a gentle spirit with the other children. And Sarah, she's like a little leader. You're doing something right. The real surprise came in the form of Mrs. Louise Parker, an elderly woman who lived 2 houses down. Rachel had barely noticed her before, but suddenly Mrs. Parker seemed to appear everywhere. At the grocery store, offering to help carry bags. At the park, bringing homemade cookies for the children. At the daycare pickup, engaging the triplets in animated conversations about their day. You don't have to do all this, Rachel told her one October afternoon as Mrs. Parker helped rake leaves in their small front yard while the children played. Mrs. Parker paused, leaning on her rake. Child, we all need someone looking out for us. These babies of yours, they're special. I can see it in their eyes. There was something in Mrs. Parker's tone that made Rachel study her more closely. The older woman had an intensity about her, a knowing look that suggested she understood more about their situation than she let on. The comfortable routine shattered on a Tuesday morning when 2 officials from Child Protective Services appeared at Rachel's door. Ms. Thompson, the stern-faced woman said, We've received reports about undocumented income supporting your household. We need to discuss the welfare of your children. Rachel's heart pounded as she invited them in. Michael was building towers with blocks while James and Sarah colored at the small kitchen table. They looked up curiously at the strangers. Someone's been making anonymous donations to support our family, Rachel explained, her voice steady despite her fear. I've reported it on my taxes. Everything's legal. The concern, the male officer interjected, is that this money could be coming from illegal sources. Drug money, stolen funds. We need documentation proving otherwise, or we'll have to consider temporary placement for the children while we investigate. The words hit Rachel like a physical blow. She watched her children, so innocent and happy, completely unaware that their world might be torn apart again. After the officials left with promises to return in 48 hours with documentation requirements, Rachel collapsed on her couch. The anonymous support that had been her salvation might now be her downfall. That evening, she found Mrs. Parker waiting on her front porch. "I heard about your visitors today," Mrs. Parker said quietly. "Word travels fast in neighborhoods like this." Rachel looked at her neighbor with new suspicion. "How did you hear about that?" Mrs. Parker's expression grew serious, and she glanced around nervously before meeting Rachel's eyes. "Because I've been waiting 15 years to tell you the truth about who's been helping you, and why." Mrs. Parker's weathered hands trembled as she set down her teacup, her eyes never leaving Rachel's face. The weight of 15 years of secrecy hung between them like a heavy curtain about to be drawn back. But before either woman could speak another word, the sound of running footsteps echoed through the house. "Mom! Mom! You have to see this!" Michael burst through the front door, his school uniform disheveled, his face glowing with excitement. Behind him, James and Sarah followed, their identical expressions of pride and disbelief making Rachel's heart skip. At 14, the triplets had grown into remarkable young people, each developing their own distinct personality despite sharing the same striking features. Michael had always been the leader, quick with words and even quicker with solutions. James possessed an analytical mind that amazed his teachers, while Sarah had inherited a creative spirit that seemed to light up every room she entered. "What's all this commotion about?" Rachel asked, momentarily distracted from her conversation with Mrs. Parker. "The talent show results," Sarah exclaimed, waving a certificate in the air. "We swept the entire competition." Mrs. Parker's eyes widened as she watched the scene unfold. Michael had won first place in the debate category, his passionate speech about social justice leaving the judges speechless. James had taken home the trophy for his innovative science project on renewable energy solutions, while Sarah's original musical composition had moved the audience to tears. "But that's not even the best part," James added, his usually quiet voice filled with uncharacteristic excitement. "Principal Martinez wants to nominate us for the State Academic Excellence Program. Full scholarships, Mom, to anywhere we want to go." Rachel felt her knees weaken. These opportunities were beyond anything she had ever dared to dream for her children. But as the initial wave of joy washed over her, a familiar anxiety crept in. The anonymous donations that had been arriving monthly for years had already raised questions with the school administration. How could she explain these new opportunities without revealing the mysterious support system that had kept their family afloat? "That's wonderful, babies," Rachel said, pulling all three into a tight embrace. "I'm so proud of you." But even as she held her children, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change dramatically. The community banquet 2 weeks later buzzed with excitement as local families gathered to celebrate their children's achievements. The Thompson triplets sat at the head table, looking uncomfortable with all the attention but graciously accepting congratulations from neighbors and teachers alike. "It's remarkable," whispered Mrs. Henderson from the church auxiliary. "Those children have overcome so much. Rachel should be proud." "Though you have to wonder," murmured another voice nearby, "where all that extra tutoring money came from. Piano lessons, science equipment, debate coaching. That doesn't come cheap on a single mother's salary." Rachel felt heat rise in her cheeks as she overheard the whispered conversations. She had always known this day would come when people would start asking the hard questions about their family's unexpected good fortune. As the evening progressed, the master of ceremonies called the triplets to the stage once more. "Before we close tonight," he announced, "I'd like to share some exciting news. These 3 exceptional young people have been selected for a very special opportunity." Rachel's breath caught. This wasn't part of the planned program. They've been chosen to participate in the National Youth Leadership Summit in Washington, D.C., with all expenses paid by an anonymous benefactor who has been following their progress for years. The applause thundered through the room, but Rachel felt the world spinning around her. Anonymous benefactor. The words echoed in her mind as pieces of a puzzle, she hadn't even known existed began falling into place. That night, after the triplets had gone to bed, still buzzing with excitement about their upcoming trip to the nation's capital, Rachel sat alone in her living room. The house felt different somehow, charged with anticipation and fear in equal measure. The soft knock at her door came just after midnight. Rachel's heart hammered as she approached the entrance, somehow knowing that whoever stood on the other side would change everything. She turned the deadbolt and slowly opened the door, and her world came crashing down around her. Standing on her doorstep, older and weathered by time but unmistakably familiar, was Mike Thompson. "Hello, Rachel," he said quietly, his voice carrying 15 years of regret and something else she couldn't quite identify. "I know I have no right to be here, but I need you to know the truth about everything. About why I left, about the money, about what I've been doing all these years." Behind him, a black sedan idled in the driveway, its engine running as if he might need to make a quick escape. Rachel gripped the doorframe, her knees threatening to buckle as 15 years of carefully constructed stability suddenly felt as fragile as glass. "The children," she whispered, glancing toward the stairs where Michael, James, and Sarah slept peacefully, unaware that their father had returned to turn their world upside down once again. The front door creaks open, and Rachel's breath catches in her throat. There, after 15 years of silence, stands Mike Thompson. His hair is graying at the temples, lines etched around his eyes that weren't there before. He looks older, weathered, but his stance is hesitant, almost afraid. "Hello, Rachel," he says quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Rachel's hand grips the doorframe so tightly her knuckles turn white. "You have some nerve showing up here now. After all these years." Her voice trembles with a mixture of rage and something else she can't quite name. I know I don't deserve to be here." Mike takes a tentative step forward, then stops. "But I need you to know the truth about why I left that night." "The truth?" Rachel's laugh is bitter. "The truth is you couldn't handle having 3 black children. The truth is you abandoned your family when we needed you most." Mike's face crumples. "That's not. God, Rachel, that's not why I left. I was terrified, yes, but not of them. I was terrified of me." He runs his hands through his hair, a gesture she remembers all too well. "My father used to beat me when I was scared, when I showed weakness. That night, holding those babies, I felt something snap inside me. I was so angry at the situation, at the whispers, at everything, and I knew if I stayed, I might become him." Rachel stares at him, her anger wavering. "So you just ran? I thought I was protecting you all. I thought you'd be better off without me." Mike's voice breaks. "I've regretted it every single day since." Before Rachel can respond, the sound of raised voices erupts from the street. Through the window, they can see Michael, James, and Sarah in a heated confrontation with a group of older teenagers from the neighborhood. One of the boys shoves Michael hard, sending him stumbling backward. "Stay here," Rachel commands Mike, rushing toward the door. But Sarah's voice cuts through the tension outside with startling authority. "Back off, Derek. We're not looking for trouble." "Well, trouble found you," Derek sneers. "You Thompson kids think you're so special with your fancy scholarships and your stuck-up attitudes." James steps protectively in front of his sister. "We earned everything we have. What's your excuse for still being in 10th grade at 18? The situation escalates quickly. Derek lunges forward, but what happens next surprises everyone. Instead of fighting back, Michael steps between them, his hands raised peacefully. "This isn't worth it, man. We're all from the same neighborhood. We should be lifting each other up, not tearing each other down." His words hang in the air, and for a moment, the tension breaks. Derek's friends look uncomfortable, shuffling their feet. But Derek's pride won't let him back down. "Pretty words from Mama's boy," he spits. "Maybe your real daddy had the right idea leaving you behind." The words hit like a physical blow. Sarah's eyes flash with fury, but it's James who loses control. He launches himself at Derek with a wordless shout, and suddenly the whole group is in chaos. Rachel bursts through the front door just as Mike appears beside her. Without hesitation, Mike strides into the fray, his voice booming with an authority that stops everyone cold. Enough! He grabs James by the shoulders, pulling him back. That's enough, son. James whirls around, eyes wide with shock. You're not my father, he says through gritted teeth. The pain that flashes across Mike's face is visible to everyone. No, he says quietly. I'm not, but I should have been. The crowd disperses quickly, Derek and his friends slinking away. The triplets stand frozen, staring at the man who walked out on them 15 years ago. Kids, Rachel says softly, we need to talk. Inside. Now. As they gather in the living room, the weight of years of unspoken pain fills the space between them. Mike sits across from his children, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles are white. I don't expect forgiveness, he begins. I don't deserve it, but you deserve the truth. He looks at each of them in turn. I left because I was a coward, because I was more worried about what people would think than about being the father you needed. So why are you here now? Sarah asks, her voice cold. Mike reaches into his jacket and pulls out a folded newspaper clipping. Because Mrs. Parker found me. Because she told me what incredible people you've become despite my failures. Rachel's eyes widen. Mrs. Parker? What does she have to do with this? She's been watching over you all these years. The anonymous support, the letters of recommendation, the scholarship applications. It was her. She was my mother's best friend. And when I left, she made it her mission to ensure you had what you needed. Mike's voice cracks. She came to find me 3 months ago, told me it was time to face what I'd done. The room falls silent. Michael finally speaks, his voice barely audible. All this time we thought we were invisible, that nobody cared. Someone always cared, Mike says. And now I'm hoping it's not too late for me to care too. Rachel feels tears streaming down her face as she looks at her children, then at the man who broke their hearts so many years ago. The decision she makes in this moment will change everything. But before she can speak, the phone rings, splitting the silence like thunder. Rachel hesitates, then answers. Mrs. Thompson, this is Dean Martinez from Columbia University. I have some extraordinary news about your children's applications. 15 years have transformed everything. Rachel Thompson stands at the edge of the university campus, watching as her son Dr. Michael Thompson addresses the graduating medical students. His voice carries the same quiet strength she remembers from when he was 8 years old, defending his siblings from playground bullies. Medicine isn't just about healing bodies, Michael says into the microphone, his white coat gleaming under the stage lights. It's about healing communities, breaking down barriers, and proving that your zip code doesn't determine your destiny. The audience erupts in applause, but Rachel's eyes drift to the front row where James Thompson sits in his military dress uniform, his chest decorated with commendations for his humanitarian work overseas. Sarah Thompson, now a successful civil rights attorney, sits beside him, tears streaming down her face as she watches her brother. The transformation still takes Rachel's breath away. These are the same children who once ate cereal for dinner because the grocery money ran out. The same kids who wore secondhand clothes and faced whispers at every school event. Now they stand as pillars of their community, each having chosen careers dedicated to serving others. After the ceremony, the family gathers at their old neighborhood for a community celebration. The modest house Rachel once struggled to maintain has become a gathering place for families facing similar challenges. Mrs. Louise Parker, now in her 80s, sits in her favorite chair on Rachel's front porch, watching children play in the yard. You knew all along, didn't you? Rachel asks, settling beside her old friend with 2 cups of sweet tea. Louise's eyes twinkle with the same mystery they held 15 years ago. Child, when I saw those babies, I saw 3 lights that could illuminate this whole community. But lights need tending, especially when storms try to blow them out. The anonymous financial support that sustained them through the hardest years had come from Louise, who had spent her retirement savings and even mortgaged her own home. She had been Mike's mentor years before, and when he called her that night he left, broken and terrified, she made him a promise. She would ensure those children had every opportunity to thrive, but Mike would have to earn his way back into their lives through genuine change and commitment. Mike appears on the porch, carrying his granddaughter, Michael's 3-year-old daughter. The transformation in him is perhaps the most remarkable of all. The man who once fled in fear now coordinates the community support network that helps single parents navigate their challenges. His journey back to his family took 5 years of counseling, steady work, and proving through actions, not words, that he deserved a second chance. "Daddy, tell us the story again," Sarah says, settling cross-legged on the porch floor like she used to as a child. Despite being a successful attorney who has argued cases before state Supreme Courts, she still calls her father Daddy, and still loves the family stories. Mike's voice is steady now, filled with the wisdom that comes from facing your failures head-on. "When you 3 were born, I thought the world would reject you because you were different. I was so afraid of that rejection that I rejected you first. What I didn't understand then was that being different isn't a weakness to hide from. It's a strength to build upon." James, still in his dress uniform, nods thoughtfully. "The kids I work with overseas, the refugee families I help resettle, they remind me every day that love isn't about biology. It's about showing up, staying committed, and believing in each other's potential, even when the world says it's impossible." Michael adds, "Every patient I treat, especially in the underserved communities, I think about how different my life could have been without people who believed in us. Mrs. Parker, Mom who never gave up, even Dad who came back and showed us that redemption is real." As evening settles over the neighborhood, Rachel surveys the scene that once seemed impossible. Her children have not only succeeded beyond her wildest dreams but have chosen to use their success to lift others. The community that once whispered and judged now points to the Thompson family as proof that with support, love, and determination, any family can overcome seemingly impossible odds. Louise squeezes Rachel's hand. "You know what the real miracle is? It wasn't that those children succeed, though Lord knows that's beautiful to see. The real miracle is that they chose to turn their struggle into strength for others. That's the legacy that will outlast all of us. The story that began with abandonment and fear has become one of redemption and hope." Rachel realizes that sometimes what feels like an ending is actually the beginning of something far more beautiful than you ever imagined possible. What's your story of overcoming the impossible? Share it in the comments below, and let's build a community where every family knows they're not alone in their struggles.